It was a cold, cloud-covered morning on February 28th, 2019, when 70-year-old James Pruitt pulled into the Glacier Gorge trailhead in Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park. The forest was still. Temperatures hovered below freezing. Towering peaks cast long shadows over the frozen landscape. James stepped out of his silver 2006 Toyota Corolla, zipped up his jacket, and started walking alone into the woods. He was never seen again. James had no idea that this hike, through one of the most beautiful yet brutal terrains in the country, would be his last. He left no note, no GPS trail, and no indication of where he was headed. Only the wilderness knows what happened next. James Pruitt wasn't just another hiker. He was a Vietnam veteran, a husband, a father. He lived a quiet life in Etowah, Tennessee, with a strong appreciation for solitude and nature. At 70 years old, he still had the discipline and physicality of a man half his age. He had taken hikes before in the Smokies and the Blue Ridge Mountains, but the Rockies were different. To those who knew him best, James was a man who had seen darkness, survived it, and come out the other side craving peace. His daughter once said he didn't talk much about the war, but I think he felt safest in places where there weren't any people, just trees, sky, and silence. He had a routine: pack light, dress smart, carry essentials, and always return by sundown. He wasn't careless. But even the most seasoned outdoorsmen can underestimate nature's unpredictability. That morning, James left no itinerary. The only clue was the park's trail register, where he signed in, and the surveillance camera that captured him entering the trailhead shortly after 10 a.m. His car was left in the lot. No other hikers recalled speaking with him. There were no confirmed sightings after that. When James didn't return home, and when rangers noticed his vehicle still parked late that evening, a missing person alert was issued. The next day, the search began. By March 1st, the conditions had worsened. Snow had started falling overnight, and temperatures dipped even lower. Rangers launched an extensive ground search. Over 45 people were involved: dog teams, aerial drones, snowmobiles, and a helicopter from the Colorado National Guard scoured the area. But James had vanished without a trace. No footprints, no clothing, no discarded gear, nothing. The Glacier Gorge trailhead leads into a maze of snow-packed trails, frozen lakes, and steep climbs. The elevation changes rapidly. Wind whips through the trees like a whispering warning. Visibility can change in minutes. What may look like a peaceful walk in the woods can quickly become a disorienting trap. But James had hiked here before. He wasn't unfamiliar with the terrain. So why no sign? Why no distress call? Why no body? For the first few days, the team was hopeful. Maybe he took shelter. Maybe he fell and was waiting for rescue. But as the hours turned to days, and the days into weeks, hope began to fade. His family flew in from Tennessee. They held on to faith. His daughter gave a statement to local reporters: "He's a survivor. If anyone could make it, it's my dad. We just want to bring him home." But the forest offered no answers. The weather, which had been James's quiet companion on so many hikes before, had now become his greatest adversary. Hypothermia can set in within minutes. Disorientation is common in low-visibility snowfall. Some experts suggested he may have walked off-trail, fallen into a ravine, or under snow-covered rocks. But even then, why wasn't anything found? In the absence of evidence, theories began to circulate. Some believed James became disoriented, wandered too far, and succumbed to the elements. Others wondered whether he had an underlying medical episode: heart attack, stroke, confusion from altitude sickness. But none of those theories explained the total lack of physical clues. No boot prints, no hiking poles, no broken branches. Then came darker thoughts. Had he intended to disappear? Was this trip something more than just a hike? Those who knew him rejected this. He loved his family. He made future plans. There were no signs of depression or distress. He hadn't emptied his bank accounts or left farewell notes. But some rangers quietly admitted it's always possible. One park official, speaking off the record, said, "We found people weeks later just yards from the trail. It's cruel. You can be 10 feet from someone and never see them. That's the Rockies." Searchers pressed on. When the snow began to melt in the spring, hopes rose again. Maybe now something would be uncovered: a jacket, a boot, a scrap of cloth. But even as the terrain softened and the ice receded, the mountain held its silence. James Pruitt had vanished, completely. By April, the search had been scaled back. Resources were shifted elsewhere. Park officials posted signs asking hikers to report anything unusual, but there was nothing to report. No tips, no sightings, no closure. For his family, the pain was indescribable. His wife stayed in Tennessee, unable to make the trip west. His daughter returned home without answers. "The not knowing is what destroys you," she told one reporter. "I don't want to imagine the worst, but I already have, 1,000 times." The Rocky Mountains have a haunting reputation. Over the years, dozens of hikers, climbers, and tourists have gone missing. Some found, many not. The park is vast, with over 400 square miles of wilderness. When someone disappears out there, especially in winter, the odds of survival shrink by the hour. But James Pruitt's case is different. Most missing hikers leave something behind. A torn backpack, a water bottle, footprints leading nowhere. But here, there was nothing. Just a man walking into the trees, and then nothing. His case remains open. Every year during the spring thaw, rangers quietly revisit the area, hoping something surfaces. His photo still hangs in ranger stations. His name is still whispered among locals. James Pruitt didn't plan to die that day. He likely believed he would return to his car, drive home, and tell his family about another beautiful hike. But somewhere along that trail, something went wrong. And in a matter of minutes, a man who had survived war, raised a family, and lived to 70 simply vanished into the snow. The Glacier Gorge trailhead remains a popular spot for hikers and tourists. Most who walk it have no idea that one of their predecessors, an experienced, disciplined, intelligent man, walked that same trail and was never seen again. The case of James Pruitt is more than a mystery. It's a stark reminder of how unforgiving nature can be, of how even the strongest can be humbled by terrain, by weather, by time. For his family, there is no closure, only silence. And the cruelest part? That silence might be forever. It was the afternoon of July 24th, 1997, when 24-year-old Amy Wroe Bechtel drove her white Toyota Tercel into the vast, rugged terrain of the Shoshone National Forest near Lander, Wyoming. The sky was clear, the air warm, and the jagged mountains loomed like silent guardians. Amy had plans that day to scout routes for an upcoming 10K race. What she didn't know was that she was about to vanish without a trace. She never came home. Amy's car was found parked along Loop Road, keys still inside. Her wallet, her to-do list, even the stopwatch she used for timing her runs, all left behind. But of Amy herself, there was no sign, no footprints, no clothing, no remains, just a quiet forest, and a mystery that would torment her family and community for decades. Amy Wroe Bechtel was more than just a missing person. She was a talented runner, an artist, and a newlywed with big dreams. Originally from Jackson, Wyoming, Amy had graduated from the University of Wyoming with a degree in exercise physiology. She had moved to Lander to build a life with her husband, Steve Bechtel, a professional rock climber and local climbing icon. Those who knew her described her as energetic, determined, and full of warmth. She had competed in marathons, pushed her limits, and always looked ahead. Her sister once said, Amy didn't walk into a room. She raced into it, laughing, glowing, alive. That morning, Amy had a routine. She stopped by a photo shop in Lander just after 2:30 p.m., dropping off film to be developed. A store clerk remembered her in her black shorts and yellow singlet. She seemed in a hurry, but in good spirits. Amy told someone she was heading into the mountains to train. That was the last confirmed sighting of her. When evening fell and Amy didn't return home, her husband Steve grew worried. At first, he thought she might be with friends. Maybe she'd gotten lost or stayed out later than expected. But by 10 p.m., panic set in. He began driving the mountain roads. That's when he found her car, abandoned along a remote, unpaved stretch of loop road in the Wind River Mountains. The doors were locked. Her workout log and water bottles were inside. The driver's seat was adjusted for her height. There were no signs of a struggle. No blood, no tire tracks, just a car parked like someone had left for a short run and never returned. The Fremont County Sheriff's Office launched a massive search. Helicopters flew overhead, dogs combed the woods. Volunteers, rangers, and even climbers familiar with the region joined in. The terrain was brutal. Steep cliffs, dense forest, sudden drops. Days passed, then weeks, and nothing. No torn clothing, no discarded gear, no clue. At first, investigators believed Amy had suffered a hiking accident, maybe slipped, fallen into a ravine, or was injured and unable to call for help. But the lack of any evidence began to raise red flags. People don't just disappear. Not like this. Then came the questions. And they all led to one man, Steve Bechtel. At first, Steve was cooperative. He answered questions, helped with search efforts. But as the investigation continued, his behavior began to draw attention. Just days after Amy vanished, he stopped speaking with detectives. He retained a lawyer. He declined to take a polygraph test. Investigators were stunned. Why would a grieving husband refuse to help? More troubling were the entries found in one of Steve's old journals. Authorities obtained it during the investigation. Some writings, dated years before Amy's disappearance, referenced violence, dark, angry words that didn't match the Steve most people knew. One passage seemed to fantasize about hurting someone. Investigators wondered, was this the inner life of a killer or just venting on paper? Steve denied having anything to do with Amy's disappearance. He claimed the writings were fictional, stress relief, harmless thoughts. But suspicion remained. The timeline didn't help his case. Steve claimed he was with a friend, rock climbing during the hours Amy disappeared. But the friend later told police he couldn't verify the time precisely. It left just enough of a gap for doubt to fester. Public opinion in Lander began to fracture. Some believed Steve was innocent, a grieving husband unfairly targeted. Others were convinced he knew more than he was saying. Even Amy's family was divided. Investigators pursued every possible theory. Maybe Amy had run into a stranger on the trail, a drifter, a predator, someone looking for opportunity. Some locals remembered seeing a blue pickup truck near where her car was found, but it was never identified. No suspects were arrested. No witness came forward. In time, the case went cold. Years passed. Steve moved on. He eventually remarried, started a new family, and remained in the Lander area. For him, Amy was gone, but life had to continue. For Amy's family, the pain never dulled. Her sister described it as a hole that never closes because it has no bottom. Her parents refused to believe she would just leave. Not without telling someone. Not without a word. In 2003, Amy was declared legally dead. But emotionally, the questions kept burning. If Steve had nothing to hide, why didn't he fight harder to find her? Why lock a door that might have led to answers? The most haunting detail of all is how quickly Amy disappeared. She left her car, likely intending a short run, perhaps only 30 to 60 minutes long. The trail she would have taken was familiar. She'd trained there before. For someone that fit, that aware, to vanish so completely, it defied logic. Experts believe that if Amy had fallen or gotten injured within even a few hundred feet of the road, search teams would have found her. But the forest revealed nothing. No scent for dogs, no physical evidence, no hint that Amy had ever left her vehicle. To this day, law enforcement still considers Steve Bechtel a person of interest. But no charges have ever been filed. There's no body, no crime scene, only speculation. And that's the most excruciating part of this case. Everyone has a theory, but no one has the truth. There have been tips over the years, letters, anonymous calls, psychics claiming visions. A few hikers even found bones in nearby forests, but none matched Amy's DNA. Nothing brought closure. In the years since Amy vanished, the landscape around Lander hasn't changed much. The roads wind through the same trees. The cliffs still rise, jagged and untouched, and the forest still whispers the name of the woman who walked into it and was never seen again. Amy Wroe Bechtel's story remains one of the most chilling unsolved disappearances in the American West. It's a case that feels unfinished, unsettled, like something is missing. Because something is. A daughter, a wife, a runner, a light that was extinguished far too soon, and a question that may never be answered. What happened to Amy? It was October 8th, 1976, an unusually cool and overcast Friday in East Tennessee. Clouds pressed low over the Smoky Mountains as a school bus from Bearden High School made its winding ascent into Great Smoky Mountains National Park. 40 students were on board, their chatter filling the bus with life. Among them was 16-year-old Trenny Lynn Gibson, a quiet, artistic junior with a thoughtful gaze and a gentle spirit. None of them knew they were about to be part of one of the strangest disappearances in the park's history. By the time the sun dipped behind the mountains that evening, Trenny was gone. Not just missing, vanished. No one saw her leave. No one heard a scream. And despite one of the most intense manhunts the park had ever seen, no trace of her has ever been found. That morning, Trenny had no idea she would be hiking. The field trip wasn't optional, and the destination, Andrews Bald, had been selected by the biology teacher, Wayne Dunlap. Trenny's mother, protective and cautious, had packed her daughter a lunch and a coat. The weather was brisk, in the 50s, with a chance of rain. No one expected danger. The students were told to stick together. Chaperones were present. What could go wrong? The hike began around noon. The class divided naturally into groups, some moving quickly, others falling behind. Trenny walked with different classmates along the way, sometimes at the front, sometimes drifting behind. No one noticed anything unusual at first. But somewhere on the trail, between the Klingman's Dome parking lot and Andrews Bald, something happened. Something no one saw. And by early afternoon, Trenny was gone. One student claimed he last saw her on the trail, bending over a bush as if examining a plant. Another thought she had stepped off to the side to adjust her shoe. A few believed she was just behind them, walking at her own pace. But Trenny never reached the final destination. When the group turned back toward the bus at around 3:30 p.m., the realization began to sink in. Trenny wasn't with them. Panic didn't set in immediately. Maybe she was with another group. Maybe she got turned around. Maybe she'd already made it back to the bus. But by 4:30, when the rest of the students had returned and there was still no sign of her, the fear began to take hold. The park rangers were alerted. The sun was fading. A cold mist began rolling through the trees. The first hours of the search were frantic and disorganized. Flashlights darted through the underbrush. Names were called into the dark. But the silence answered back. That night, the temperature plunged into the 40s. Trenny was out there, somewhere, in the cold, wearing only a light sweater and corduroy pants. Her jacket, packed by her mother, was reportedly left on the bus. When dawn broke, the search intensified. The National Park Service mobilized rangers, bloodhounds, and helicopters. The trails were combed. Nearby ridges and ravines were searched, but the terrain was unforgiving. Steep drops, thick vegetation, and weather that shifted without warning. One of the bloodhounds picked up a scent trail that led from the trail toward the Appalachian Trail, then stopped abruptly near the road. Some searchers believe this indicated Trenny may have left the area, possibly with someone. Others suggested she fell or was taken down the slope. Her scent dispersed by the wind. But no clothing, no backpack, no footprints. Nothing. The trail had gone cold. As the days passed, suspicions began to swirl. One student, Robert Simpson, quickly became the focus of whispered rumors. He and Trenny knew each other. He had even been at her house the night before, helping with homework. Some students said he was walking near her that day. Others said he was acting strange. But Simpson denied knowing anything. He cooperated with investigators, took a polygraph, and was eventually dismissed as a person of interest. Still, the rumors never stopped. The park was shut down for multiple days. FBI agents joined the case. Psychics were consulted. Helicopters scoured the ridges again. Over 700 searchers logged thousands of man-hours across 16 square miles. But it was as if Trenny had dissolved into the mountain air. Trenny's family was devastated. Her mother never gave up hope. She drove the winding mountain roads daily, searching for signs. She put up flyers, spoke to media, and pleaded with anyone who had been on the trail that day to come forward. Somebody knows something. So were they, she said, again and again. But no one ever did. Her father, a former military man, took a more reserved approach, but the pain haunted him just the same. He later described feeling robbed of everything without explanation. Theories multiplied in the absence of answers. Some believed Trenny had been abducted, that someone, perhaps a hiker or even a classmate, had lured her away from the trail. Others believed she became disoriented, wandered off, and succumbed to the elements. But even that didn't explain why her body, her belongings, anything, were never found. There were darker theories, too. Some suspected foul play from within the group, that Trenny had been pushed, harmed, or even murdered by someone she knew. But there was no evidence, no confession, no signs of violence. Her disappearance became a ghost story whispered by hikers, a warning to stay on the trail, a reminder of how quickly the forest could consume a person whole. Over time, memories faded. Leads dried up. The park resumed normal operations, but the Gibson family never stopped waiting. For years, her mother left the porch light on, hoping Trenny might walk through the door. She never did. One of the most haunting elements of the case was how quickly it all happened. In a group of 40 students with chaperones nearby, in daylight, how does a 16-year-old vanish without anyone noticing? Some students later admitted they felt something was off that day. A few remembered strange hikers on the trail. Others recalled a blue car parked on the side of the road, but none of it could be connected. Nothing solid ever emerged. In 2000, nearly 25 years after Trenny disappeared, her parents finally moved from their home in Knoxville. They had kept her room just as she left it, a time capsule filled with school books, sketch pads, and unworn shoes. Her mother, before passing away in 2012, said she still dreamed about her daughter. Sometimes she's a child again. Sometimes she's grown up, but I never see where she goes. To this day, Trenny Lynn Gibson's case remains open but inactive, officially unsolved, unofficially deeply chilling. The Great Smoky Mountains remain one of the most visited national parks in the United States. Millions pass through each year, walking the same trails where Trenny once walked, unaware of the girl who never came back. There's no marker, no plaque, only a name in a file, and a cold breeze that sometimes moves through the trees with a whisper. In 2011, one park ranger, now retired, spoke anonymously about the case. "I've seen people fall, get hurt, even die out there. But this one, it's different. The trail swallowed her." That's all we know. The story of Trenny Lynn Gibson isn't just a missing person case. It's a haunting reflection of how the world shifts in an instant, of how a single step in the wrong direction can erase everything, and of how the human heart can keep searching, even when the trail disappears. She was just 16, her whole life ahead of her, a quiet girl with big dreams. And on one cloudy afternoon in 1976, she walked into the woods and never came back. Whatever happened on that trail, someone knows. Someone remembers something. Maybe it's buried under guilt. Maybe it's just a memory pushed too far down. But until that truth comes forward, the mountains will keep their secret. And her family will keep asking the same question they've asked for nearly 5 decades. Where is Trenny?